The book of Proverbs, verse 18. A wicked person earns deceptive wages, but the one who sows righteousness reaps a sure reward. Okay, so, hi everybody, this is Christian RPG Guy, or Christian RPG Gamers. So, the background footage is from Unicorn Overlord, and I'm trying trying some different dot out here. I think this one says, listen to God. To be honest with you, I can't even find my little dot half the time, but we'll try this one out. It's like a little ranger on there. Okay. So I think for today's video, I was trying to think about which video I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to make one of several videos, but okay. So I think I might talk about the. This was a new video game coming out. It's called Greedfall 2. I think I want to talk about that video today. Also, at some point, I would like to go through the Magic the Gathering set, the new I can't think of exactly what the name's called. It's like Dusk More, I think it's called. Or maybe I'm just getting it wrong, but I've been playing. I play Arena. Well, I don't want to say like every day, but I mean, I play it sometimes. So yeah, there's that. And I might want to talk about a few other things, but so for now, let's just talk about well, let's just talk about Greedfall 1, I guess, a little bit, and then maybe discuss some of the ideas about the new Greedfall game coming out. Okay. So, and also I want to try to put some kind of a Christian perspective on it. So, I did play Greedfall 1 originally when it came out, and I beaten the whole game. So I was watching the streamer. His name is called Brian Menard. Go check him out if you're interested. I like watching a lot of his videos. But he was talking about Greedfall 2, and I was like, well, hold up. What are you talking about? It's like, because he wanted to play Greedfall 1, getting ready for Greedfall 2. So I was like, I didn't even know this game was coming out. I mean, maybe I was just out of the loop, but I was like, hold up. I wasn't sure if he was joking or not. But yeah, apparently Greedfall 2 is coming out. I don't know exactly its release date. I think it's sometime within the next, like, 2 weeks it's coming out. So, I mean, it's coming out soon. Now, I mean, obviously when it gets released, it's probably going to need a couple days for someone to make a patch or two or whatever, but it should be coming out pretty soon. And, I mean, I really liked the first game. So, I'm going to be real with somebody. Greedfall 1, it was basically a AA game, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's what I would classify it as. So, like, again, I'm not going to try to go too heavily into the spoilers. And there might be, I mean, I might give some of the very basic premises of the series. I mean, I don't really like spoiling things. But okay, so in a lot of the areas in the game, it's like they reused a lot of materials and stuff for like the backgrounds and for the combats and, like, you know, the faces and some of that kind of stuff. Which, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, it's a AA studio. It's probably very expensive and very difficult to just use too much uniqueness stuff. But that is obviously, you know, a factor in the game. Now, I don't know about this new game entirely, but as you can see, the game, it can feel lackluster sometimes. Because, you know, the AA games just don't have, like, you know, like $1 billion to back them up. And they don't have, like, you know, 5,000 people working for them and massive money and all sorts of opportunities, and they got a smaller studio. So, you know, it is what it is at the end of the day. But I mean, you know, a lot of AA games tend to be really good at the same time. So there is that. I again, like, I did have a really good time playing the game. I would say it has a pretty decent, compelling main story. Most of the characters are pretty interesting in the game. Again, it has some complex, like, political intrigue and some, like, different morality. And it also, in holiness, to God. I mean, it does reference a lot of, like, you could say, like, a lot of Christian themes, but it also, not even just, like, Christian themes, but it talks about the idea of stuff like colonialism and stuff, and like literally colonial stuff. Like, they have, like, pilgrim hats and stuff. And it's obviously, it has a lot of fantasy themes in it, and it's not really Christian, quote unquote Christian. It's a fantasy world, but you can tell a lot of it was highly derived, from the real world, but it's technically fantasy. So, like, you probably would almost presume they're talking about, like, the Catholic Church for the main religion of the world. It's a little bit subjective. It's a little bit debatable, but it kind of feels like that sometimes. So, again, it has kind of like a darker fantasy tone at times, and also the game is pretty neutral, I feel like. Oh yeah, so but overall, it is a lot of fun. I personally feel like the combat system is pretty good, and it has it has a lot of things in the game that I think were just I had a good time. So whenever I think about the game, I have a pretty positive disposition towards it. Again, it has pretty good it is a pretty good open world game that you can explore the map in. It has a lot of adventure. It has a lot of loot opportunities. Again, like, it has this lackluster feel to it sometimes because they just couldn't quite get there with, like even some of the loot and stuff. Some of it felt a little bit repetitive, but again, you got to do the best you can do with what you got available, and sometimes that's just the way life is. But yeah, like, they have multiple different trees of different, like, again, like, this game represents an RPG game pretty good. They have like you basically, every time you level up, I mean, I'm not going to try to get too into the nitty gritty, but basically you get like an attribute point, and like, I think by next level you get like a skill point, and you get like a perk point or something like that. So you can continuously keep upgrading your character like every other level. Again, like, you get like you can put like a point into to charisma. You can put like a point into, like, you can the game. I feel like the game has a very heavy combat system, so you probably want to focus more on combat. And then like it has so it has like persuasion. I think it has like like intelligence, like science. It has like some lock picking, some ability to explore the world easier. I mean, there's also like potion making. I'm not sure if I remember how much you can refund your points entirely. There's probably a way to respec in the game. I don't entirely remember. It's been a while since I've like thoroughly played it. And then also it has your combat. There's melee combat. So there's melee combat. There's also ranged combat. It's a fantasy world. It has some like spells and stuff, and like, as a Christian, I generally just don't like a lot of stuff. I just disagree with it. But we'll just kind of like, it is what it is, right? It's a fantasy world. Most fantasy worlds have like sorcery. It is what it is, right? We as Christians know in holiness that God condemns that stuff. But it is what it is. But it has a wide variety of different stuff you can invest into, and for the most part, it feels pretty good. And like it keeps some of your abilities, some of the things separate. So like, you get a point. I think like every level up, you get a point where you can put into like your combat, or just like or whatever you want to invest in that. And they have different like, it's not like an in-depth skill tree, but it has like a little line that you can go down one of two ways and get to the ending point. And then it kind of keeps the two things separate. So one is your combat skills, and the other one is like your basically like you know your ability to role play in the game. Like it's like your role play points, which I think is pretty cool. And the other thing about this game is, again, you really just cannot go down too many pathways if you want to be successful in it. Like if you're trying to play as like the main game character story, and you want to make the quote unquote like you know the morally good, you want to be like a goody boy, right? You pretty much have to take the charisma points. But there's also different ways to role play and interact with the world, which is definitely very cool. And again, like it has a pretty interesting main story. Again, I don't want to go too heavy into the plot, but if you just focus on the main story in this game, it feels pretty satisfying. And this game also, to be honest, it has some pretty good side quests. And like it feels at times like a AAA game, even though it's not technically. And the world is very complex. And there's also, again, so it has like these issues. A big part of the game has to do with basically like you got a more like the British, like kind of like almost like a European, maybe a British, Spanish, European. When they were in their prime, going out to a new map area and interacting with the people there, and it's kind of like you got a lot of tribal people, kind of like a lot of pagan people, and it's like a lot of the struggles between, you know, primal tribal people versus, you know, colonial, you know, people who want to expand and trying to, you know, make their name for themselves, and then, you know, people who normally live in that area. And there's all sorts of conflicts within both of the major parties, and there's all sorts of conflicts between both of the parties. And it's this huge, like, kind of like a dumpster fire of issues. And then you basically, as the main character, just kind of get thrown into the big mess and mix of all this. So there's just tons of morality choices you got to make, and a lot of this game is about choosing which of the two major factions you want to support, and you can kind of try to be in the middle if you want to. You know, obviously it's a role-playing game, so you can kind of get into your character, or you can kind of decide however you want to do it. And there's also, to be honest, there are pros and cons, you know, to siding with either of the two major factions. And there's a lot of smaller factions also in the game. And there are some religious factions and stuff too. Although, I mean, I don't have like the database or whatever the list of all the names, but I do remember. Okay, so I mean, obviously this is not like a major spoiler for the whole game, but this is a spoiler for a side quest. So I'm gonna use this spoiler here. So maybe skip ahead for a minute if you don't want the spoiler. So when you're going out, you can support a religious faction, and like the church, for example. So, okay, so this is a kind of a controversial quest, but at the same time, it's also like it really, because obviously this is a fantasy game. It has a lot of real world aspects to it, but it's also fantasy. So you're working with these group of pilgrims who are part of the main church, and you go out and you're doing this quest, and you're trying to just think. I can't remember the exact absolute itty bitty details, but the main premise is this: is you're looking for a quest to search out some kind of like a tablet for the. You're basically trying to serve their church, and I think you bring one of your pilgrims or one of your people with you, or you have a group of people that you're kind of working for, and they work for the church, and they are trying to they're looking for some kind of like religious artifact or some kind of a reference to it, and you go out there and you discover that this area is one of the origin histories of their religion, and what their artifacts and what the religious inscriptions say, and what their like quote unquote god or whomever it might be in this world. This teaching is different than what they're teaching. This origin story is different than what they have been taught and what they know. And it is an interesting moral complex issue, because this would kind of undermine the church in some sense. So it's this huge moral debate or battle or whatever. And the people, I think they come by, some of the people from the church, like the explorers looking for artifacts, they go out there. I can't remember if they go there with you directly at that point. If they go out there with you at that point in the quest, or if they come back and then they see it, and they say, "Oh yeah, this is what the actual the religion is supposed to actually be," and then you go and you can take this information to the church. They got like their big headquarters. It's called, the game's called Greedfall, and because basically your pilgrims going out to a different world. I think they even have that new MMO games called New World, or even basically the United States of America. When the people from Europe went to Americas. But then the church sees this, and then you can make a series of moral questions. You can tell them the truth. You can omit certain information. They have you go through a little trial. Not like anything serious, but the different religious leaders, they have a discussion with you. They ask you a bunch of questions, and okay, again, obviously there's some spoilers here, but you might want to skip me. I don't know how far you guys skip ahead, but or if you even care at this point. But then the church leaders, they ask you, what your opinion on whether you think this is true or not, and then they go out and then they say, they give you one final statement you can make, and then they leave for a couple hours and they have a discussion, and then they will come back and then they will give you their verdict on whether they're willing to change their church or not, or they're going to reveal this information, or how they're going to deal with it. Also, I believe, depending upon your reputation standing with several different groups and how you go about this, or all the little nitty-gritty and all the role-playing and stuff, you can deeply impact and influence this decision. So that is a really interesting quest in this game. Highly complex, extremely political. Not like modern day politics, but just more in-game politics or in-game religion. Personally, I don't necessarily know the correct answer or what you should or shouldn't do. Or I don't know, what would we as Christians do if we found out that there was information that was true or not true. This is really complicated. It's also kind of controversial. But it's a really cool thing you can do in the game. Now, when I played the game, I think I was pretty neutral, I think, towards most. They had the church, and there's also the tribal people, and it's and you got you got your own faction. I think I was pretty split between them. So, the way I usually play a lot of these types of games is, let almost lost my train of thought there for a second. I think, shoot, what was I gonna say? The way I play these games. Oh yeah. This is what I was gonna say. So the way I play a lot of games like these, now this is subjective. I'm not saying this is what you should do. I have a pretty hands-off approach towards a lot of these things. Like, I don't really want to like tell other people what to do, especially when it comes to like, you know, deep morality. Or I mean, like, you know, doing the right thing is important. But there is free will, and there's also reaping and sowing. Not sure how long is this video? Oh, it's almost getting out of there. It's like, do I as an individual want to tell this church what to do and how they're going to make this decision? I usually like to be kind of like, you know, I mean, like, I will give them the information. I'll tell them the truth. They can make their own decisions in the game or in their world, and they can, you know, they can debate about it. They can debate it. They can discuss it. And I try not to like directly influence. I mean, I'll just tell them the truth. Like, you know, I'll just try to do the right thing. I'll give them their information or answers and let them have their free will, and they can kind of make their own choices and kind of live with it. So that's kind of what I did. I felt like in the game. So they went back, and I think they found their answer. And I think the church was like, "Well, we're not going to change. We're just gonna." I think they decided that they were going to reject this new information, and they were just gonna. I think they were gonna pretend like it didn't exist, or they were just basically they didn't want it. They just wanted to maintain their own way of religion. They just didn't care about this. Maybe it's the truth. I think they just would rather keep their way of life and not have the actual truth, which is also kind of morally gray on their behalf. Now, I also didn't really push them too heavily, and I didn't really have strong factional support. I mean, sometimes you try to be like a good person hero. You kind of play a bunch of sides, and it's like, I don't know. I mean, you can be strong. You can have strong points in a faction. I think I wasn't able to make much progress there. I mean, I didn't push them strongly, so they kind of just were like, nah, we're good. And I just got paid and I moved on with my life. I think those like researchers were kind of pissed off at the church, and maybe the information would get out eventually. Obviously, it's not a real world. Now, the Greedfall 2 is coming out, so I have no idea, right? But I don't know how many of your choices from the first game are gonna impact the second one. But that was definitely a very interesting religious aspect of the game, and maybe that reflects kind of like the older traditional Orthodox like church too. So, or even like, you know, like from the Bible. Okay, so I think this background footage is from when I was playing Elder Scrolls Online. So I tried to turn the sound effects off, so it should just be the music, but we'll see what it sounds like. It might sound good, it might sound terrible, so we'll see. Okay, so Greedfall 1, I overall really like that game. And I have a pretty strong positive disposition overall for the game. Now, it's a little bit older at this point. I mean, honestly, if you wanted to buy the game, you could probably, if you got it on sale, you get a pretty good deal on it. You might have a good time. Okay, so the second game's coming out, I think sometime either this next week or 2 weeks from now or something. So apparently they might be changing up some of the stuff in the game a little bit. I'm not sure if that's for the better or for the worse. I know the streamer I was watching, Brian Menard, he wasn't happy with the fact that the second game is going to be more turn-based. So the first game is more like Dragon Age Inquisition in a lot of ways. It's probably the best comparison. So you can play the game, or just even the Dragon Age combat system. Like you you play the game, it runs at real time, and then when you want to make decisions, you can either, it slows the game down when you're choosing different actions, or you can either pause it, or you can it slows down, allowing you to have a little bit some real time. I think it's like real time with pause, and I think, you know, honestly, a lot of people like that quite a bit, because it doesn't just stop your game every single second. You can also I think you have the ability to do a tactical pause. It slows it down for you, and you also can do it in real time, making it much more of a comfortable experience. But I think Greedfall 2, I mean, I don't know if this is absolute for certain, but supposedly they're just gonna make it like just turn-based like combat. Now, some people really like turn-based combat, so to them, they're probably very happy about this. I personally, I mean, honestly, I don't know. I used to play a lot of turn-based stuff. Then I kind of slowly started shifting more into, like, you know, action adventure. But I do really like the pause feature, especially when you have like companions. And there are times where it's nice to be able to pause the game mid-combat, or to slow certain things down to make it easier to, like, you know, target or navigate. Because, I mean, it is a video game at the end of the day. And I do enjoy that. Because, like, I don't always necessarily like a 20-minute long bullet sponge enemy either. But it's all about trying to find a balance. So I think pause level combat, or slowing down level combat, is probably more of the middle ground. But I'm not sure what their creative decision was to make the game turn-based. Maybe it was just the financial for the money. Maybe, to be honest, that's just their creative choice, that they just wanted to be turn-based. Which, to be honest with somebody, if that's what they want to do, and if the combat's really good turn-based, I could be down for it. So yeah, so what are my hopes for the second game? Or like, what is my expectations for this game? It's like, I know they've made a bunch of games like this already. Like, so they had like Elix 1, and then they made, from Elix 1 they had Elix 2. They had Horizon Zero Dawn, they made it Horizon Forbidden West. And you know, they have the Outer Worlds. Eventually they're gonna make the Outer Worlds 2. And a lot of these games, they get like a prequel, or not a prequel, like a sequel, or maybe even also get a prequel. They get Red Dead Redemption 1, they have Red Dead Redemption 2. You know, they had all the different D&D games. You got like Pillars of Eternity 1, you got the second one. I probably want them to keep the game kind of like the first one. I want them to remain mostly, faithful to the lore, and mostly faithful to the way it was originally designed and built. I mean, obviously, they should polish up some of their, you know, their character models and stuff, and, you know, they can keep the same type of game, have a new map location, you know, so we can go to a new set of story plot, some new characters. Maybe they should go out and make some new character models or whatever, or faces, or some locations, so they don't have to use the same one for everything. But yeah, just I think just a better, I'm not even like, I mean, it doesn't have to be like, you know, like hundreds of times over. Just honestly, the same thing as the base game for the most part. Do some upgrades, do some polishing, maybe add a new feature. They don't have to, like, you know, be revolutionary on every little thing. Just make it a solid game, and just add a little bit more, and take away some of the bad aspects and add a few better things to it. And I think the game will probably be pretty good. And also, you know, they got to continue from like the story, or they got to working the plot or maybe working some of the old plot from the first game. I think this game overall is probably going to be pretty good. It doesn't have a huge amount of negative hate towards it that I can tell, but I think a lot of people are probably going to say this game is going to be like a mid game. They're probably going to say it's like a 7 out of 10. It's unfortunate, but that's just probably what's going to happen. I mean, I'm probably thinking, again, like, it's good to have healthy, realistic expectations. It's probably going to be like a 7 out of 10. I mean, for the first game, I mean, I almost would probably give the first game like an 8 out of 10. It's hard to say what this game's going to be good or not. It's probably just going to be a decent game with a decent story. And it might be, to be honest, it might be kind of a forgettable game. But it's unfortunate, but like a lot of these games, they're kind of just like a wash. It's like, I mean, I wish it was better, but it's probably what's going to happen. People are going to play it, it's going to get some talk about, and probably 3 to 6 months later, the game's just going to be forgotten. And some people who really like RPG games or these types of games are going to play it. And it's just going to probably be like a backlog game for a lot of people. It'll probably make its money back. I don't think it's going to be like the best thing ever, though, to be real. I mean, I'm definitely probably going to like it a lot. I mean, I'll probably watch it streamed, or I'll watch like the game movie of it. And I mean, at some point I might buy it myself. I might just do some footage from it or something, but again, we'll have to see. It might be a good game, it might be an okay game, it might be a great game, but I don't know for sure. But I do hope the game succeeds, and I do hope they put some more interesting moral complex choices and some philosophical, or even some like of their religion or something. Because like the first game, it made me think a lot of times. It made me question some of my beliefs and why I think or don't think certain things. And I think that's a net positive for a video game. If a game makes you question what you believe in the real world, that is pretty good. I mean, that's a pretty powerful thing to do. But I also just don't know for sure. About 32 minutes. So yeah, I mean, again, I know, okay, so also just if I'm being real, they're probably going to put a whole bunch of like sorcery stuff in the game. It's like, from like a Christian point of view, it's like you can have a fantasy world, but you don't always have to just like glob it in magic. Unfortunately, that's probably what's going to happen. And that's what's happening with like every single fantasy game. It's not like they're just gonna, it's not like, it's like fantasy and magic do not have to go hand in hand together. You can have a fantasy world without just, dousing it in sorcery at the same time, but we will see what happens. Like, we'll see what happens. I don't know. But it's probably what's going to happen. So, but I think overall, I think the second game is going to be pretty cool. So, again, like if you like stuff like, more medieval classic kind of RPG games that have some kind of a little of a fantasy twist to them, and you enjoyed this kind of stuff, like maybe go out on on YouTube or some other site or whatever, and go out and either watch the game movie for the first game or watch a streamer play the second game, and or if you're interested in it, go buy it yourself, right? And it's probably a pretty good investment, or at least just give it a chance. Like just go check it out. It's probably going to be pretty fun. And again, like, it might just be like a mid game, but to be honest with somebody, I mean, I enjoy playing a lot of mid games, so it's not going to be revolutionary, but it'll still be pretty good. I think it'll be a solid game. It'll probably be somewhere between like a 6 to an 8 out of 10. It's a sequel. It'll probably have a decent story. It'll play pretty good. You'll have a fun time. It'll be like a probably good 25-hour long main story. It'll fill kind of like the gap between a lot of like RPG games we all like to play. And I think we'll have a good time. But we'll see what happens, right? So yeah, I guess thanks for watching. I guess as I've been trying to say in a lot of my videos for the past, like, probably like past month even, you know, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know your thoughts about all this stuff, whether you agree or disagree, and do you want them to make, like, you know, fantasy, like, you know, religious references, or like we call, like, non-real political stuff. I mean, sometimes that stuff is fun. You know, it's like the modern day politics is just freaking, like, you know, pull your hair out or something, right? But I mean, it's like the modern day politics, this stuff is just going crazy. But I mean, I'm not really against there being, like, politics inside of a game world, because if it makes logical sense. And do you think, like, you know, do you think religion should be referenced in, like, you know, in video games or, like, fantasy worlds, especially if they're not Christianity? Or do you think Christianity should be put in video games either? Because, I mean, it's obviously the world's not real. So these are some difficult moral questions. Yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. And, you know, are you excited for the second game? And how much did you like the first game? Alright, so, yeah, thanks for watching. You know, I appreciate it. God is good.